Well, thank you, Rosemary, for spending your time to discuss the movement to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. Can you start by providing a brief background of yourself?
Sure. So I'm the president of Blue Silk Consulting, and it's a small boutique firm, and mostly we help clients design their global supply chains with a lot of emphasis on manufacturing in China. I'm also the author of a top-selling book on Amazon called 42 Rules for Sourcing and Manufacturing in China. And for the past 5 or 6 years or so, I've been helping my clients do a lot of global expansion in their manufacturing operations throughout China and seeing how they can take advantage of both the marketplace there as well as manufacturing items for export to the rest of the world. So that's what I do in terms of my consulting work. But in the last year or so, there's been quite a movement in the US to evaluate when and if some manufacturing can be brought back to the US. So, and as I'm sure you know, America has experienced a pretty deep recession over the last few years. Um, uh, Hopefully the repair to the economy um, will benefit from having some manufacturing brought back. So I have a new initiative. My company has a new initiative to help companies in the U.S. evaluate whether they can bring at least part of their manufacturing back.
And can you talk about who do you think needs to move manufacturing back?
Well, I think a lot of it is still very anecdotal. And when you look at the numbers, there's still a $300 million trade deficit with China. So we're still importing, in the US, we're importing way more than we're exporting. But I think it's time for a lot of companies to take a sort of a step up with a more strategic view. So they understand how to manufacture in China to take advantage of selling into the burgeoning China market, but also how they manufacture in local economies, whether it's Europe or the Middle East or South America or North America, to address the specific needs of the markets in those areas. So I think most companies are going to start evaluating a more global sense rather than just manufacturing, in one country or another, to really think about their manufacturing footprint, where's the most appropriate place to manufacture, and how do they take advantage of being close to their customers around the world.
Is there anything you could say about how this would be done?
Yeah. So our approach is to do a front-end analysis, and we work with our clients to evaluate the potential possibilities of product lines, whether or not there are enough suppliers in the local areas, whether the customer base will sustain manufacturing in a local area. I mean, there's a whole analysis. We have a 10-point diagnostic that we do to determine whether or not it's feasible. And then to that, we add the government regulations and some of the new incentives that the Obama administration has recently rolled out, together with some of the things that are happening in the individual states in the US to provide tax incentives and so forth. The problem is that a lot of the manufacturing technologies have already moved offshore. So even though a company may want to manufacture their product here, the supportive technologies may be gone and the supportive skill sets. So it's not as easy as saying, well, we're going to bring a manufacturing line back. You may have to evaluate whether or not you've got suppliers locally, whether you've got the skill set with your workers, whether or not there is reason to produce high-end goods here, that sort of thing. An awful lot of companies are doing it, though. Apple is a good example. They've already announced that they're bringing a manufacturing line back to the San Francisco Bay Area, one of their lines that will represent a small piece of their business, but it's one step. Starbucks has brought back the manufacture of their ceramic cups to the U.S. to a plant, reopened a plant in Ohio. General Electric has brought back several production lines for white goods or appliances to, I believe, a place in Kentucky. So, there are a lot of examples like that where companies are starting to rethink their strategies and determine if they can, in fact, bring things back to the U.S. Obviously, this is going to have an effect on China as well. I don't think there's any desire to put Chinese out of work or to cause a recessionary environment in China. Really, it's really not a zero-sum game. It's really about thinking about a new strategy moving forward. So taking advantage of world markets and the potential for manufacturing in all different regions.
So, what type of products are more suitable to bring back to the U.S.?
Oh, that's a very good question. Um, that's a very good question. It depends, I think, on where the markets are. So if a product, for example, requires a lot of labor, it's a very labor intensive assembly product, then it probably is best to stay in a low cost labor country, whether it's China or Vietnam or Indonesia or Malaysia. If it's a product that requires more advanced skills in engineering, then potentially that's a good product to bring back. We also help our clients consider new technologies like 3D printing. So, as you may know, 3D printing is layering of products that are sort of built layer by layer, and it's a new technology that is gaining a lot of interest and popularity. So, there may be products that plastics, for example, that could be 3D printed, requiring additional technology and support that could be done in the US. So, what kind of products? I think it just depends on what kind of products you're making and what, a whole bunch of different variables that might go into the decision process.
And where in the U.S. Have you seen manufacturing be moving to?
Well, interesting enough, Apple's bringing it back right here to Silicon Valley. I live in Silicon Valley, and I've seen over the last 20 years, almost all the manufacturing has moved away because it's very expensive to manufacture here. So even though so many high-tech products are designed here, new software is created and so forth, there's very little manufacturing that's local. However, Apple has committed to start a factory again here locally in Silicon Valley. So I think it's just a matter of time. Um, each place in the U.S. has different cost structures and different advantages for manufacturing. In the South, in the deep South, for example, the labor costs are less, so there are a lot of factories that are located there. For call centers and other sort of information processing, a lot of those are located in the northern part of the U.S. in the Dakotas and some other areas where labor cost is relatively inexpensive and there is a lot available, a lot of people available. Um, so could be anywhere. We also know that a lot of the uh, governments of each of the individual states are starting to put incentives out there to bring companies back because it of course represents more employment. So there may be tax holidays or some kind of tax incentive or free land or something that's going to assist with the economics. I think the biggest problem that I see in the US is that our infrastructure is not in very good shape. So when I go to China, I'm always amazed at the infrastructure, the highways, the railheads, the deep water ports, the logistics, warehousing. The infrastructure is just spectacular. I mean, really spectacular and modern, obviously, because it's all been built in the last 25 years or so. In the US, our infrastructure, our electric grids, our highways and bridges and so forth are not in very good shape. So there has to be a concurrent investment in infrastructure in order to really make a big difference. And then, so I really think there are three factors. There's got to be tax incentives and financial incentives. There has to be focus on infrastructure, and there has to be additional emphasis placed on education. So the U.S. has to start graduating many more engineers and math and science majors than we have in the past 20 years or so. So there's got to be some emphasis there.
And do you have any final recommendations for companies considering moving manufacturing back to the U.S.?
I think it's certainly worth a try, but the one thing that we counsel our clients about is not to just simply close up shop in China and move back to the U.S. I mean, that's really not a very good strategy, and it's not very thoughtful. I mean, you really have to make sure that you are aware of all the implications for manufacturing, and also that you want to pay attention to the Chinese market, because it's the largest target market for consumers in the world. And so you don't want to just walk away from the ability to address that market and to manufacture goods that are going to be sold in that market. So the caution is go slowly and do a lot of evaluation to determine what's the right answer for both China and for the US.
And thank you, Rosemary, for sharing your views on manufacturing and manufacturing in the U.S.
Sure, you're welcome. Thank you.